to the webinar. Today we are going to walk you through how to use SAM in support of pre-award activity. I've got 3 tasks for you. In summary, we're going to create your user account because you will need that to do everything else. Then we're going to migrate the permissions that you used to have in some of the legacy systems. And then finally, I'll walk you through the pre-award activity, how you're doing it, what you're looking for, where to find information that you were used to finding in CCR or EPLS, and where to find that information in SAM. And hopefully, this will get you set up to make the 4th quarter of the fiscal year a little easier and familiarize you with the tool that you need to use to do your job. So, with that, let us move into task 1. Who will need a user account in SAM? Really, it's anyone from just your average person who wants to save search queries. Maybe there's some sort of research requirement that they have. So you are welcome, even if you're not a federal government user or an entity trying to register. You can create a user account in SAM and just use that to save queries and be able to do interesting, useful, but not really complicated things. Then you've got the group of people who want to manage their actual registration records. So these are the ones who are trying to do business with the government. They're either potential contractors or vendors, or they're potential grant applicants, or even federal government entities that are trying to do intergovernmental transactions or do business with other aspects of the federal government. So that category of user would also need a user account. Then there's you, the federal government users who actually use SAM to verify registration status, go in and look for information that you need as part of your pre-award, either eligibility determination or just general evaluations that you're doing prior to making a federal award. When you go to create your account, you've actually got a choice, and most everyone on this webinar probably will need the individual user account. That is, it's yours, it's tied to you as an individual. It can go with you to a different agency. If you moved jobs, you would just then get a different role associated with your new agency, and you would not have permissions in your old agency. So that's your account. It follows you around. The system kind of accounts, they are really just for the system-to-system interfaces. That's the contract writing systems, the grants management systems, the finance systems. These are federal systems that are taking data from SAM and using it as part of the business process. So probably not what you're looking for, but wanted you to understand why you're going to get 2 choices. So let's go through the process of setting up your user account. And what I've done today is taken screenshots of SAM so that you've got them for reference when you download the slides, which will be posted in conjunction with this webinar and the questions and answers. So it'll be a complete package. You can take it home and have it for reference later. So when you get to the home page, and that is you've either just typed in sam.gov in your internet address bar, you're looking at the actual address bar itself, and you see that it does end in .gov. That makes sure you're at the right place. If you're searching, you may get different search results if you just searched in Google trying to find SAM. The easiest way to make sure you're really at the actual sam.gov website is to type it in the address bar, and that way you know you're at the actual government website. So once you're there, you've got 2 locations where you can click the Create an Account, either at the top right, or there's a button right there that says Create User Account. And you are welcome to use either. It'll take you to the same place. You will get to the Create an Account page, and this is where it'll present you with those 2 options, your individual account or your system account. And again, more often than not, you're going to want to do an individual account to actually use and interact with SAM on your during your daily operations. So go ahead and click the Create an Account button. This is where you will provide the system information about you. It is fairly minimal what is actually required, and you can tell what is required by the little asterisk after the end of each of the data elements there. So your first name, your last name, your email address. You do have to confirm your email address because that is what the system will use to communicate with you. I want to make sure you see the yellow box there. Please note you need to use your federal government email address. That's whatever ends in .gov or .mil or .fedus or .si.edu. Whatever your agency email address is, you need to use that because the system will then recognize you as a government user, and it will give you additional information that a regular public user wouldn't, that will be useful for your job. Then you provide your phone. You do have to put the country you're in, and then go ahead and click Next. The next page is actually the information about the account itself. You're going to create your username, and this is the one thing that when you've created it in association with your user account, it can't change. So once you've set it up, if you then moved from one agency to another, your username is going to be the same. It can't be duplicative of another username in the system, but it will follow you, and that's how you'll know that's your user account. Everything else you can pretty much update. You could update your password, you could update your security questions, your email, your phone, your address. That all can be updated, but your username, once set, does not change. So you create it. If it's long enough, it'll tell you. You get the little green check marks. The same thing then with the password. Instead of trying to guess if you're actually using the right combination, it'll tell you. It'll check off each of the little boxes. You'll get 8 characters, a number, a letter, a special character, and you're good to go. Then you confirm the password, and then you move on to the security questions. For the security questions, you're going to select 3 and then provide answers to 3. They're the kind of questions that you should be able to remember instinctively. Hopefully they're not too complicated, and there's only 3 of them, but you still may want to take a screenshot at the end and keep it in your records. So you've answered the security questions. Now you're going to take a quick look and make sure the information that you've entered is accurate and what you want it to be. Again, it would be handy to print this page out or take a screenshot of it so that you've got it for reference. And that way later, if you need to, you can always answer the questions. And then you submit. So once you've submitted it, you get a little confirmation screen. This confirmation screen is not the end of the process. It is truly the congratulations, you've submitted it, but you then need to go check the email, look for an email at the address that you've used, because you have to confirm it. Just like setting up an account in so many other kinds of internet applications, you've got to confirm that the email address you've provided the system is actually a valid one, and that you can access it. So you would then go to your email. Obviously, this would be your federal email account. This is just a sample here, but you're looking for the email that comes from SAM, and it'll be from an @sam.gov email server, so that would be the right clue. It will tell you your username and what you've registered as. And what you want to do is either click on the link or copy the link and paste it into an internet browser. And that will then allow you to go and log in, and we'll do that next. But this is what confirms to the system that that's an actual legitimate email address and that you have access to it. So you click on the link, it'll take you to the login page. You enter your username and password that you've just created. You hit login, and now you're done. Now you've actually activated your user account. When you click this Done button, you'll go to the user dashboard. This truly means you've got an active user account in SAM, and from there you can then do other things. All right, so you hit Done. You accept the fine print. Like every good government system, we tell you that we're monitoring you, and anything that you can and say will be potentially used. So you read the fine print, you accept it, and now you're in SAM. You come to the welcome page. There's news, there's announcements, there's information that usually is focused on the registrants themselves, not really, it's not tailored to who's logged in, it's just general information that's interesting or useful to whoever's using the system. So, and that is the end of task 1. So at the end of task 1, you've got your individual user account, you've created it using your federal email address. That'll get you set up for the next step. So for task 2, we are looking at taking this new shiny user account that you've created and either associating it with some permission that you used to have in one of the legacy systems or moving on. So we keep talking about migrating, and you've heard the term migrate. If you are just trying to search for records in SAM and access the for official use only data, and I'll go into that in more details, really there's nothing else you need to do once you've created that individual user account. You would be done. However, if you had a role in one of the legacy systems, you entered exclusion records in EPLS, so you were a DBAR user, or you actually were the one that managed your agency's FedReg account, so the intergovernmental transaction record that your agency used, you were the one that managed it. You would need to migrate that role into this new user account so that the system knows that you're allowed to do the things you need to do. If you used the same email address when you created the individual user account, then it's easy peasy. It'll know what you need and it will associate the right permissions. If you had a different email address or you didn't have access to the old one, you can search for your old email address and say, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, and then migrate it. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so here we are. We've logged in. We've got our user account set up. The first thing you will see, the very first time you log into SAM, will be this little, would you like to migrate a legacy system account? Yes, or make the message go away. So if you say yes, it'll take you to a page and it'll ask you which system that now is part of SAM, which system are you talking about? Did you have some role in CCR? Did you have some role in FedReg? Did you do something in EPLS? For the federal users, don't worry about ORCA. You really never had a role in the online reps and certs application, so that's kind of irrelevant. For purposes of demonstration, we will just click CCR. If you had used the same email address, like I said at the beginning, it would recognize it, and I'll show you that on the next screen. This one, if you wanted to search for an email address from, maybe you changed offices or whatever, you could take a look, and SAM would then reference the tables that we brought over from the legacy systems to see if that email address was there. So in this case, it recognizes that I had a test address in CCR before using my email address. And then it just tells you, hey, whatever you used to be able to do in CCR, this is your SAM username, that's the email address it was, this is what you're connecting to. And then you submit. So you get the message back saying, all right, your new user account is essentially tied up to the old permissions you have. Congratulations, off you go. Sometimes, and if not you, sometimes perhaps one of the registrants that you're dealing with says, hey, I keep getting this error telling me that I've already migrated. What that means is either someone else in their organization has already migrated their role, or they've already done it themselves. For a while, the migrate button wouldn't go away, and so people had a tendency to click it every time they logged in. That has been fixed. If you've already migrated a role from one of the legacy systems, you won't see that little banner anymore. So the frequency of getting this screen is fewer, but I wanted to bring it up just so you would understand what perhaps what you could see or what one of your registrants might see. So that was task 1, task 2, done. The rest of this webinar we want to focus on walking through the things that you need to do and where you would do them within SAM in terms of pre-award activity. So, given the fact that SAM brings in CCR, FedReg, ORCA, and EPLS, you can now do any of the things you used to do in those systems from one place. So, like it says there, you can look for a registration status to make sure that they have an active registration before award or payment, and that goes both from the grant side of the house or the contracts side of the house. Doesn't matter. You do have the registration requirement there. You can take a look at the delinquent federal debt indicator, and we're definitely going to talk about that in more detail. You can look very quickly to see if the registration associated with that DUNS number has an active exclusion, and the caution that I would give here is not every exclusion record has a DUNS number, so you need to do additional searching if you're looking to confirm or deny whether or not the entity you're looking up is actually an excluded party. You need to do another layer of searching. And also, even if you saw a yes, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, but even if you saw a yes for the active exclusion, you would still need to go to that exclusion record and read it to see what it meant. So don't just focus on the yes, take it to the next step, and actually read the details. The small business size indicators, those are contained within the reps and certs, and it's a little bit of a different layout than it was in CCR, so I'll show you where you can find those. The socioeconomic responses in terms of HUBZone and other things, again, properly contained in the context of the FAR provisions. I'll show you where to find those. Walking through the different points of contact. Is it the government point of contact or the electronic business point of contact? Each of them serves a different purpose. I'll show you where to find those. And then we'll do some searching. Hopefully we'll have time at the end where I can show you how you would search for exclusion records. A couple helpful hints, and remember, these slides will be available for download, so you don't have to take notes, you don't have to write all this down, but when you're starting, please make sure you're logged in. The only way you will see the for official use only data, and by that I mean the taxpayer identification number associated with that registration, or if they say they have opted out of being displayed in the public search, and there are various reasons why they may want to do that, the only way you would see them would be by being logged in as a government user. So that would allow you then to see someone who says, I've opted out of the public search. Also, that will allow you to see federal government IGT records. So if you're looking up, trying to write out your IGT paperwork, and you're looking for someone's agency location code and dispersing office, you won't be able to see the information around that unless you have logged in and have additional permissions. So if you were trying to actually update a registration, so if your office or your location actually was themselves registered in CCR, or you're a small agency and you were registered in CCR, and you go into SAM and you've got your user account and you've migrated your permission and you try to update your record and you get an application error, it could be because your DUNS number was not on the federal government hierarchy for FedReg, and so we need to add you. So just double check. If you're getting that error, submit a ticket, request to be escalated to tier 2, and they will be able to get you connected to the hierarchy. So it's not a complicated fix, it's just something to be aware of. Again, when you're looking for the small business size indicators by the NAICS code and the SBA certifications, go look within the context of the FAR provisions, which are stored in reps and certs. If, however, you click on the reps and certs link, and again, I will show you pictures of this, so it'll make more sense in a minute, but if you click on that link and there's nothing, and it just says, the entity has not completed the reps and certs, what that means is when all of these systems combined last July, the registration for that DUNS number, they didn't actually have an active record, or honestly, even one within 18 months of being active in ORCA for us to migrate. So there was nothing nothing to bring over. So the bottom line on that is if you see that they don't have any reps and certs, and you know that they're supposed to be registered to pursue contracts, then you need to tell them to go update their registration so that you can get the reps and certs. All right, so we talk about searching. We're going to pretend that we're coming in the morning, we've got our coffee, we're sitting down, we're logging into SAM, and we want to search within SAM to see what the status is of this potential awardee. So we go to the search record tab. You've got three options there. You've got the search bar, which is, I think is more useful because you can use a name search or a specific search term. You can do a DUNS number search, but just as a caution, if there were no exclusion records, if the exclusion record didn't have a DUNS number tied to it, so it was a firm, but they, in EPLS, perhaps they had not given it a DUNS number, you wouldn't get the results back. So I'd recommend that you start with the top search bar and do the broadest search to start with, and then you can filter it down later. But it's always better to start with a broader search set. So we did a very generic John Smith search. Obviously, that's going to give us a lot of results. What we look for is making sure that our search terms there, we get to see what they are. Notice the asterisk. Since I didn't put it in quotes, it's going to give me back anything that has John or Smith in it. So the things that have both John and Smith, it'll give me, it'll be a higher relevance, if you will. But it doesn't mean that John and Smith necessarily is the legal business name of the entity. It just means somewhere within that record, the terms John and Smith appear. Also notice that the records are going to default to active. So it's first going to give you back any active records. If you want to search and see for some reason if there's an inactive, like do they have an expired registration, you can click the inactive button, and we'll go into that a little later. So we're going to pick two of these records. We're going to pick one exclusion record and one entity registration record and kind of compare them. So we've got John D. Smith, who has an active exclusion as an individual. And then we've got John Smith, who has an active registration for the purposes of doing business with the government, so he has an active entity record. So he has a DUNS number, he has a cage code, and his indicator says he does not have an active exclusion. So if we saw these two results, we would want to examine them and make sure that we truly understood what we were looking for so that we didn't mistakenly kind of connect them in our minds together. So because SAM eventually is intended to have these different functional areas that encompass the whole life cycle, it's set up to be able to integrate these multiple different systems. This first phase was focused on the entity management, so managing everything that has to do with that entity registration, so that would be CCR, ORCA, and FedReg, all of the information that pertains to that registration record, and then what's called the exclusions portion of performance information. In the future, performance information could contain things like CPARs and PEEPers and FAPIS, but for now it's just got this exclusion functionality. So the first and most important difference here is that the two kinds of records were created for entirely different purposes and by different, well, obviously different people. You've got the entity registration records that are created by the registrants themselves because they want to do business with the government. You've got the exclusion records, which are governed by an entire host of regulations and legislation that deal with suspension and debarment, but those are created by the federal agencies themselves. So just very different in the information they contain, but very useful to have in the same system to be able to reference and kind of compare. So at the moment, because both kinds of records are contained in SAM, when you're searching, you will likely get results from both functional areas. So telling them apart, you've obviously got the green little entity box tag there on the one record. You've got the little purple exclusion box on the other. So the first one's a registration record. The second one is an exclusion record. When you expand them, different data. When you drill down into the view details, completely different data. And like I mentioned before, if the exclusion record has a DUNS number and that DUNS number also has an associated record in SAM, you would see the active exclusion yes. If it did not, then you would see no, but that does not necessarily mean that that's all there is out there. Okay, so let us pretend then we have these two records and we want to just do a quick comparison to see if it's possibly the same entity, same individual. So we expand. When you get your search results, you can always expand quickly to see sort of the bigger snapshot just by clicking the little plus sign. So you expand it out. And for the exclusion record, you see that in this case, this individual lives in Philadelphia. They were excluded by Health and Human Services, and there is no termination date, so it's an indefinite exclusion. This individual lives in Connecticut, has a DUNS number. The system doesn't think the exclusion records are associated, but you want to make sure. So pausing for a moment just to look at the entity registration record and the information that's contained in that expanded view. One of the things you'll see is delinquent federal debt, yes or no. If you saw a yes, that would mean that Treasury's Financial Management Service has notified SAM that that DUNS number, so that entity, has some kind of delinquent federal debt with the federal government. It's not limited to tax debt. It could encompass, it could have been reported by several different agencies. Because of privacy laws, SAM does not actually have the details of the debt itself. They have to contact the Financial Management Service, so they have to contact Treasury. There are frequently asked questions posted on FSD that give the details of how to do that. But more importantly, the reason that field exists in SAM is because of a program called the Treasury Offset Program, which essentially says you can't use the government-wide purchase card to pay someone who's got delinquent federal debt, because then the government can't collect some of the money that's owed them or other debt that's owed them. And again, this slide and all of the other slides will be available for download when we post the webinar. So don't worry, you will have this for reference. I also wanted to remind you, though, that there are at least 4 frequently asked questions posted on the Federal Service Desk website that deal specifically with the delinquent federal debt and give you the resources to go look it up and make sure you understand what it means. So even if you saw a yes for delinquent federal debt, it doesn't mean that you can't award to them, that you can't pay to them. It just means you can't use the purchase card to pay for goods and services. And that's just an important thing to know. All right. So we had our 2 records. We had our John D. Smith with the exclusion, and then we had our John Smith with the entity registration record. Let us take a look at the exclusion record. If we were to click on the view details, we would be taken to this screen. We would see that the type of exclusion program it is. This is an individual, not a firm or a vessel or a special entity designation. The exclusion type itself. Later in the presentation, I'll talk about the difference between what used to be known as cause and treatment codes and the exclusion type. So this is a prohibition restriction. It has a very specific standardized language in terms of the nature and effect. Agencies are encouraged when they create exclusions to put additional comments there. And through a combination of reading the nature, reading the effect, and reading the additional comments, you would be able to tell most likely what this would mean for you if that actually was the individual you wanted to make an award to. And if at any point in time you had questions specifically about why that exclusion was entered for that individual firm, special entity designation, you could contact the excluding agency, and the points of contact are listed on SAM under the agency exclusion POCs. So even though you're looking at this record, you want to make sure and you want to know, was this really the individual that I think it is? So taking the address from the entity registration record just to see, was this the same individual? Entered the address, it doesn't match. It's just one more thing that tells us that that exclusion record wasn't the one I was looking for. So good for John Smith. If there were cross-references, if for instance, John D. Smith was a CEO of a company, and not only did he have an exclusion record, but perhaps his firm also did, you could see the cross-reference there to that firm exclusion. The same thing with locations. So there's lots of information contained in the exclusion records, which is why we encourage you to read them. All right. So one more reason to think that our two John Smiths are not related here. When we drill into the view details for the entity registration record for John Smith in Connecticut, we see the indicator says no, but more importantly, we know that the city, different address, not the same match. So it's not the same individual. Back maybe 20 slides ago, when I initially showed you the search results, there were lots and lots and lots of search results, not all of which had John Smith in the name. I just wanted to give you a few instances or a few examples of why other things would come up. So you've got John in the name, and they happen to be living in Fort Smith, Arkansas. It does have both John and Smith, but it wouldn't be higher. It would be lower in the relevance. Okay. Next one you're looking at, the name doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have either John or Smith. Then you realize that he lives on John Smith Court. Or maybe not lives, maybe that's the business address. Nevertheless, it contains both of your search terms. It's up to you to refine it and make sure that the records that you're looking at are the ones that you really want. So now let's go in and take a look at how would you read, for lack of a better word, a registration record. Gorman Manufacturing, totally made up company. It has an actual DUNS number, totally made up. If you search for it, it is used for demonstration purposes. So everything I'm about to show you is not real and is in no way sensitive or proprietary or anything like that. I'm just going to use it as an example. So you want to confirm their registration status. They've bid on the solicitation that you had out on FedBizOps. You've logged in and you've found them. Now you're going to look at their view details. When you click view details, it takes you to this first page. You've got two quick portlets, two little boxes there that have summary information for both functional areas within SAM. And then you've got a series of links down the left side, this navigation within the record itself. You're going to focus on the entity record portion of this navigation, and you're going to see that there are 4 main sections to any registration record. If the entity has registered to pursue federal contracts, they will have information contained in all 4 of those sections. If they have told SAM that their purpose of registration is only to be eligible for grants or federal financial assistance, they will not complete the assertions and reps and certs because that is specific to contracting. They would have only completed the core data and the POCs. So if you happen to look up a record and suddenly see there's nothing in either of those 2 sections, go to core data and find their purpose of registration, and if it just says federal assistance awards, then you understand why. If you actually needed them to be registered for all awards, to have provided the NAICS codes and other things so that you could do a size determination, you would need them to update their record. So let's walk through this and show you where things are in SAM. All right, so clicking on core data. When you first click on it, all of these categories are expanded. They each represent different pages of information. You can collapse them all so that you can just see the important parts, or the pieces that you're most concerned about. Within the business and TIN information, that would be obviously where you'd find your taxpayer identification number and the purpose of registration. So why are they there? And that's where you would see all awards if they are trying to pursue federal contracts and want to be eligible for contracts and grants. And you would see federal assistance awards if they were just looking for the grant side of the house. CAGE, NCAGE, CAGE, the Commercial and Government Entity Code, and NCAGE would be the same thing if they were a foreign registrant. That's where that's contained. It's also contained in the summary information at the top, so you don't necessarily need to go to that page. General information page has information about business type and that sort of thing. Financial, unless you have specific sensitive data access permission, you're not going to see their electronic fund transfer or their banking information. That's just reserved for those who are in the payments side of the house. But that's where it would be contained. Also in the financial information, if the entity had delinquent federal debt, so if they had that yes at the very beginning, it would also be repeated there. The executive compensation and proceedings, registrants have to complete this, but you don't get to see it unless later on an actual award is made. The very fact that they have an active registration in SAM means that they have responded to those questions. You would find proceedings information on FAPIS if it was applicable for them, and you would find executive compensation information on USA Spending if it was applicable for them for that award. Information opt-out, that's where you want to make sure you're logged in. And now let's go through some of the key parts here in a bit more detail. All right, 8A certification. 8A certification is the one SBA designation that you're going to find in the general information. HUBZone, I will show you again, is in the reps and certs, but that's where your 8A certification or 8A joint venture would appear. Again, these slides will be posted, so you'll have them for reference. Assertions, because you've logged in with your government user account, you would be able to see the size metrics that they've entered. And you would also be able to see the disaster relief information if they had signed up to be part of the disaster relief registry. If you wanted to take a look at the NAICS codes and the actual size metrics, you could go take a look in the goods and services, and that's where you would see it. Like I just said, you'll notice that in SAM they now select a primary NAICS code. That was not something they did in CCR. It is something that the Small Business Administration asked for, and so we had an opportunity to provide that. It would allow you to know if they have updated their registration in SAM, what they consider their true strength. And that's where you would find that. You would also see it within the NAICS table later. Reps and certs, again, as you get to the reps and certs section, you could download the entire packet, or you can click on any of the links and see within the reps and certs what they have responded to in the questionnaire and elsewhere in SAM. So your two throughout reps and certs, you're going to see the check marks. These are all grayed out. You don't get to change them, but that's based on how they responded to the specific provisions when they were completing their registration. All right, your small business indicators, you're going to find them in the two provisions that you would expect to find them in reps and certs itself, 52.212.3, and the small business program representations, 52.219-1. In both cases, you can click the link and it will open up that entire provision and all of their responses within it. When you do so, you will see the NAICS codes that they selected, the size standard, which will either be receipts-based or employee-based, so your average receipts, so that is an employee-based one, and then whether based on the size standard for that NAICS code, whether they would be considered small or not if they were awarded a contract in that NAICS code. The thing that's different about SAM is you actually have the opportunity to see how the size metrics they provided would measure up against any of the NAICS codes. In CCR, you were limited to just the NAICS codes that they selected, and even though you didn't have to, in many cases, contracting officers would make registrants go back in and add additional NAICS codes to their registration so that they could see on screen what they would actually, whether it would be a yes or a no. Within the next step was supposed to be ORCA. So they registered in CCR, they provided their information, they were then supposed to go over to ORCA and update their reps and certs and actually certify to all the information they provided. Many times that extra step didn't happen. Now within SAM, it has to. So if they go down the I want to pursue contracts path, they have to provide this information and they have to respond to it. So compliance has gone up. That is a good news story. The other side of it is, because the information is contained in one system now, you're able to see what they, if they chose to get into mushroom production there, what they would be considered would be still small. When they submit their registration, they understand that they are certifying to the responses for the entire NAICS table. Even though you've got the quick reference of what they do most often, if they have something else that they want to get into a new area, you've got the information on hand to be able to make an informed decision and reduce the burden on the registrant. All right, so we showed you the 8A. The 8A certification is currently in the business types. The HUBZone designation is within reps and certs. And again, it's going to be in one of those. It'll be in both places, but the two places you could look for it are the reps and certs and the small business program. You're going to click on the link, expand the provision. This is the language. If you saw the first box checked, then it is HUBZone. If the second box checks, it is not HUBZone. Again, if they did not have a reps and certs record previously, they've got to update their registration in SAM before this works. So within the next few months, as everyone goes through and gets their records updated, the population of people who have not completed their reps and certs who need to is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But if you think they're HUBZone and you look at this and you don't see a value, go contact them, have the discussion, say, have you updated your record in SAM? And then when they do that, then you'll see the correct designation portrayed there. All right, for the points of contact, the two ones that are most often used are your electronic business point of contact and your government business point of contact. Because you have logged in with your federal government user account, you will be able to see their email addresses. That is not something that's part of the public display of the information, so that's another benefit to being logged in. All right, the search filters. Let's take a quick step back. So now we understand, hopefully, how to read a registration record and understand where to find it. One thing I just realized I didn't mention was where to find the actual expiration date. If you see that they have an active status, you can look within the core data. It's on that first page, business and TIN information, and that is, it'll show you their expiration date. In CCR, when they went active, their registration was active, then it was 365 days from that date when their record would expire. In SAM, because you have not just the information about the registrant, but you also have this reps and certs legally binding information that they are certifying to, and they're saying, as of this date, this information is 100% correct. The date is tied to the date they submit. So the expiration date will be 365 days from the day they submit the record. That means if it takes a week to get the IRS external validation complete, or if it takes, another couple days to get the cage code validation complete, both of which happen after the record has been submitted in most cases, that you may see a record become active. So the registration may become active, but it looks like it should have been active a week ago. The reason being, again, that expiration date is tied to the day they submitted it, and then if it takes a couple days for all the validations to occur before the registration actually becomes active, that I just wanted to kind of call that out. The other side of it is you will see their expired record or their old record or whatever information was in the system until it becomes active. So even though they've submitted the record and they say, I've updated everything, my new information's in there, why can't you see it? Once the new record in SAM goes active, then that will become, the one that you'll see when you search. But until that new information becomes active, it won't be what you see when you search. So it's just explaining a little bit of the context behind it to hopefully alleviate some of the confusion or potential questions about why you see what you see when you search for an entity's registration record. So now, enough about entities' registration records. Let's look at exclusions for a few minutes. You've confirmed that they have an active registration. You want to double check and make sure that they do not have any exclusion records. You're not 100% sure that using the DUNS number alone would result. That's a good thing to be cautious about. So you're going to do a name search, or you're going to do a filtered search looking for the legal business name, looking for perhaps names of some of the principals, just trying to do other things that are best practices in terms of exclusion searching. So how do you get to those filters? What you can do is a quick search, just quote asterisk quote. And that will it'll just open up the database and allow you then to access the filters. So you're obviously not going to look at all this stuff that comes back in this initial results set, but what it allows you to do is then select that performance information filter category. Just like EPLS did, it has the warning that says if you only search by DUNS or CAGE, you will probably not find what you're looking for because there may not be enough information to match a record. You say OK, and then you determine which filter category that you want to use. You've got multiple different ways of searching for exclusion records. You can search by the classification itself, name, any of those combinations. More than likely, you're going to start off with the entity name or the individual name. And if you want to narrow it down, that's fine. Again, in the theory of start a little bigger and refine the results, I'd go with the entity name or individual name. The system will treat, again, the two values that you provide. It will return results that have both of them. But there are some things that, just like in EPLS, you've got to have exact matches. So if you want to use a social security number as part of that search, or you want to use a taxpayer identification number as part of that search, it won't display it to you in the results, but it'll allow you to enter the social security number and check the database against it. But it would have to be the exact social security number for John Smith as entered on that exclusion record. So unless you have a very specific search term, that may not be the best way to go. Entity name, pretty good one, allows you to search for their legal business name. Again, the fewer terms you use allows you to get the broadest set. Otherwise, you get into the challenge, the problem of trying to guess exactly what was entered on the exclusion record and having to have that match. If you wanted to just see, everything that DHS had excluded, you could try doing that. However, you've also got a couple other ways of searching. And again, these were search options within EPLS, so they should be relatively familiar. The name search, some combination of a name search, either a single name search or multiple names, is probably the way you're going to get the closest result set. The other thing you could do if you really wanted to is download this public extract. Now, the extract is a daily snapshot of all active exclusions in SAM. It would allow you to have it, search within it, sort within it. It's published 5 times a week, and little cautions there about how many rows and what version of Excel you should use. But bottom line, if you're doing power searching or analysis of exclusion records, this is another way of getting the data and another way of confirming or denying the search results that you've got. So to find that, you actually don't have to be logged in for this one. You can just go to the Data Access tab. The second box on the page is this Exclusions Extract data package. You've got 7 days worth of data, and you can download whichever one you want. Again, if you're looking for change records, you would have to compare the two, but on the whole, the most recent one will give you the most recent snapshot of the database and what it contains in terms of active exclusions. Click the link, download the extract, open it up, and then you can search within it and sort within it, and it is another way of doing it. All right, so we have a few minutes left. The CT codes, for those of you who are used to looking for specific CT codes, if the record was migrated from EPLS to SAM, so the exclusion record was created in EPLS, it had what was called a cause and treatment code. During the requirements process for SAM, there was a working group that got together out of the exclusions community, and they came up with 4 categories that were going to be the new exclusion types. All of the CT codes were mapped to one of these new exclusion types, and there is standardized language on each page. When we looked at that view details, that is your nature and effect. The standardized language for the 4 exclusion types is what you will find there. Any additional information the agency chooses to provide is contained in the additional comments. That table is referenced on SAM. You can find it, I believe, in general, there you go, help, exclusions information, and you would find the agency exclusion points of contact, you'd find the CT code information, you'd find other reference material about exclusions contained there. In summary, we went through 3 tasks. You've created your individual user account. If you had any, you migrated your roles and permissions over from the legacy system. And then we walked through how to search and conduct your pre-award activity in SAM. These slides will be posted. You've got them for reference. There's also additional information on the help page. There's user guides. There are quick user guides. There's a very, very big full SAM user guide. And there are helpful hints. There's also the Federal Service Desk, which has a frequently asked question database that you can search and sort. And as we find additional things, we are constantly updating that. You can ask a specific question. The web form is a good way of doing that because that way your requirement, your concern is accurately captured because you've described it. Or you can call them between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and they can try and help you that way. With that, this concludes the content of the webinar.